So Jason, I just moved to set up YouTube Live, and as soon as that is loaded and going, I'm going to turn over the host controls to you.
All right, great. I'm ready when you are.
Okay, great.
There's a lot of people still to admit.
Whoops.
And our final panelist, Jessica Campos, is just joining.
Okay, great. Thank you. Fan Young, I saw your message. I will unmute you. Yes. Actually, let me turn over the host controls to Jason, and Jason will unmute you. So Jason, if you could unmute Fan Young, that would be great.
All right, we'll do.
Okay, I just made you host. All right. And now can you make me co-host?
I sure can.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to go. I'm going to change slideshows here. Whoops. Go to this one instead. Okay. Let me get my script set up here. I've got a lot of stuff on my desktop.
I have a question. I don't need to control the slides, right? You control.
No, I'm going to control the slides for you,
Okay,
Fan Young.
thank
Don't
you.
worry about it. Okay. All right. So I want to say welcome to everyone who's here. Welcome to Design Challenge. I hope that you can see my slides. Perhaps you could make sure that you can and mention something in the chat if you're unable to. You're all good? Okay. And so I want to welcome you. I want to thank you for joining us. I'm one of your co-hosts for this event. If you came on before, you heard us talking to each other. There's actually quite a group. I'll be the host for the panel portion of the event. I'm joined by several of my colleagues. I'm going to name them for you, although you may not see their faces during the event, depending. Diane Bush, George Ellis, Annie Johnston, Jason Muniz, Rachel Reinhard, Leahy Rosenthal, and Nancy Salzig. All of us work at different places at UC Berkeley with different areas of focus, but collectively we work together as members of the UC Berkeley Professional Development Providers. And so we do ongoing professional learning for educators. I see that there are still some people who are waiting to be let in, but I think we can keep going. Okay, so I want to say first that we know, I was a teacher, we know that this is normally the time of year when many of you are using that last bit of energy to finish out the academic year. And that this year, instead of getting to rest after this extraordinary task you undertook this spring, instead of really even having a moment to process the enormity of what has already happened, you are jumping right into this next challenge. And so that fact was at the forefront of our minds as we were planning this event. And we've tried to devise a program that will help you, both practically and emotionally, I hope, in that process. So it's our hope that you leave today better able to identify and articulate your collective needs and expertise as educators. We hope that you leave with a sense that perhaps even this moment can be about creativity in your school institutions and in your own teaching practice, not just about harm reduction. In other words, during the discussion today, we're going to be asking you to try to imagine responses to this pandemic that are both protective in a public health sense and also actively positive for you and your students. So we don't know if that's possible, but that's what we're going to try to do. So let's get started here. We've got a packed agenda today. 1 minute away from the end of my intro, and I think I can make it. We have presentations by 6 different people, including the names you see listed there. I'll introduce each of them as we get to them. We have 45 minutes for you in breakout discussions where you will have a chance to discuss some of the protective measures that are being asked of you. And then we're going to have a 15-minute period of reporting back. We're not asking all of you to say what you have figured out or discovered. What we're going to be doing is collecting information and sharing them on slides. So my first question for you is one, to check your controls, and two, just can you in the chat box write quickly what you are hoping to get out of today? And you can open the chat, you see that in your controls at the bottom. Many of you are probably quite familiar with Zoom at this point, and maybe write in there what you're hoping to get out of this 2 hours. And I want to let you know that everything from this event, including some of these responses, but not the rest of the chat, and the slides, video, everything will be available to you afterwards, so you can bring that back to your school as you need or desire. This is just a quick introduction or note about who we are, because I'm already running a minute behind. I will skip over it, but it's in the slide deck. And I want you to be aware of all of the different entities that are here doing programs for teachers and schools. Okay, I want you to note 2 quick view options. If you came on early, you saw this, but when I'm sharing my screen, as I am right now, you can toggle between fit to window and other sizes. You can also choose side-by-side mode, which I think you might want to do because it'll make it so that you see the presentation slides and the speaker's face together. You may find that helpful. You also, when you're in your discussion section, can toggle between gallery view and speaker view. My suggestion is that when you are in there, you are in gallery view so you can see everyone. Okay, I am into my first presentation quickly right here. So our first speaker is Fanyang Liu. He is a professor of virology at the UC Berkeley School of Public Health. And he is going to be talking to you about safety and security for teachers. So we're jumping right in here. I asked him to talk about why certain public health measures work and how they work. So Fanyang, it's over to you now. And I'm going to keep sharing my screen, but George, if you, or whoever's job it is, if you could spotlight Fanyang, that would be great. Fanyang, we're ready for you whenever. Are you muted?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Okay. So, well, thank you very much for having me here. I feel great honor as well as privilege to share with all of you some of our knowledge about the COVID-19, as well as some of the recommendation or idea about how to face the challenge in classroom for 2020. Can I have the next slide, please? So the topic I would like to discuss included how and why does it work to wear masks, and how useful is 6 feet of separation in a setting where people will occupy the same space for a long time, and why. And finally, I would like to discuss the topic of what might the daily screening look like and how useful it is. Can I have next slide, please? So just give a general introduction about face masks. Is one type of personal protection equipment called PPE. And masks are an important form of PPE that act as a line of defense against the inhalation, or both of a respiratory droplet that can potentially harbor pathogen such as SARS-CoV-2, the virus that are known to cause COVID-19. And different types of masks offer different level of protection, but nevertheless, when everyone wears masks, there's a synergistic effect on reducing person-to-person transmission of COVID-19. Next slide, please. So this slide just show you some of the example that, there's 3 different types of mask. And I would like to draw your attention to the mode of protection. For no mask, we do not see any protection. But if you wear a surgical mask, the main purpose is for protection of exhalation. And for cloth mask is for mostly exhalation, slightly inhalation. And finally, the very common, we have heard about it from the news, the medical grade N95 mask is really provided protection for both exhalation as well as inhalation. Next slide, please. So what's the, who is protected from, these different types of masks? And of course, no masks, nobody are protected. And if you wear a surgical mask, actually you are protecting those surrounding you, okay? And if you wearing a cloth mask, and basically you're protecting yourself, but also mostly those around you. And finally, the medical grade N95 masks are protected both the user as well as those around it, the one that's wearing the mask. Okay, next slide, please. Again, I would like to emphasize that the combined effect of every one wearing a face mask or covering will be expected to both decrease the inhalation and exhalation of respiratory droplet, particularly in an indoor environment. Have next slide, please. So another issue we really need to discuss is the physical distancing, in particular, more than 6 feet apart physical distancing. And as we know, SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, is transmitted through close contact and respiratory droplet. Therefore, in the absence of vaccine or effective prophylactic or therapeutic maintenance of more than 6 feet of separation can help limit transmission. Can I next slide, please? So maintaining more than 6 feet of separation in a classroom setting should be maintained throughout the duration of a class session. And when possible, window and door should be kept slightly open to allow for airflow. Educators should also use general precautions such as encouraging the practice of good hygiene, such as hand washing, and regularly disinfecting high contact surface such as doorknob, etc., etc. So does the wearing of face masks or physical distancing help reduce the spread of COVID-19? And the answer is yes. And this just show a very recent study, physical distancing, face mask, and eye protection to prevent person-to-person transmission of SARS-CoV-2 and COVID-19, a systematic review and meta-analysis. And can I have next slide, please? In this study, the researchers shown conclusively or convincingly that without a mask, social distancing, or any other preventable measure, the risk of transmitting the coronavirus is more than 17%. However, the use of a mask or respirator reduces the risk of transmission to 3.1%. Now, with less than 1 meter of distance and no other protective measure, the research found the risk of transmission was more than 12%. However, a physical separation more than 1 meter or about approximately 3.2 feet reduced the risk of transmission to 2.6%. Therefore, the combined effect of both safety measures will be expected to also reduce the risk of transmission significantly. Can I have next slide, please? So normal respiratory behavior, such as coughing, sneezing, have the potential to aerosolize droplets that can remain in the environment and lead to viral transmission, particularly in confined spaces. Just an example for influenza, if a person cough or sneeze, they expel more than 200,000 viral particles, most of which fall to the ground, but some of which hang in the air or land on the surfaces. Even if a sneeze was directed away from a single person, some infectious droplet can remain in the air and fill every corner of a modest-sized room with infectious particles. Therefore, all one have to do is to enter a room within a few minutes of a cough or sneeze and take a few breaths to potentially inhale sufficient virus to establish infection. Can I next slide, please? So normal respiratory normal respiratory behavior such as breathing can release 20 viral particles per minute into the environment. Therefore, if the infectious dose of a virus needed to establish infection was 1,000 virus particles, a person would need only to remain in the room for 50 minutes to potentially be infected. Speaking, however, increased the release of the respiratory droplet more than tenfold. Therefore, if we assume the same condition as above, then it will only require 5 minutes speaking face-to-face to inhale the required dose of virus to establish infection. Can I next slide, please? So the exposure to a person release infectious respiratory droplet and the duration of time serve as the basis for contact tracing. Therefore, anyone you spend more than 10 minutes with in a face-to-face situation without a mask harbor the potential for transmission. Due to the preceding, it is absolutely critical for those who feel unwell to remain at home to mitigate the risk of potentially infecting a larger group of people in a confined space or environment. Can I next slide, please? So the general safety measure to ensure classroom safety both involve active and passive health screening. And as we know today, COVID-19 can cause mild or asymptomatic infection, particularly in younger persons, which pose challenge for preventative health screening. Can I next slide, please? A daily screening in a classroom environment may include both the active screening as well as a passive screening. Okay. The active screening involves the mandatory temperature checks. The passive screening involves morning health questionnaire for students and close contact living in the same household. Can I next slide, please? Can I have the next slide, please?
Oh, they went backward for some reason.
Yeah. The benefit of active and passive health screening before entering the classroom is the temperature monitoring can be done rapidly to immediately limit exposure to other students if a peer have an elevated fever. A symptomatic student can make informed decision to seek immediate care for a healthcare provider. Information from a health questionnaire of symptomatic persons living in the same household can be helpful to limit transmission by requesting that students remain at home if someone in their immediate household is symptomatic and may be potentially infectious. Can I have next slide? So again, just want to again emphasize the take-home message today is that although the wearing the mask, physical distancing, and stay at home is feeling unwell are important to reduce transmission of respiratory viral infection. Another equally important mitigation strategy is the promotion of hygienic practices such as frequent hand washing with soap and warm water or hand sanitizer if soap or water are available. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. So we're moving to our next speaker. I want to say thank you, Fan Young, for that. I want to also clarify for you guys, I know that you've had, of course, plenty of time to read, lots of stuff online about public health interventions. But I wanted Fanyang to go into a little bit of detail about why certain things work and what things work, so that you can think about it in your classroom context and understand why a specific thing might make sense or another thing might not make sense, or why a certain arrangement of seating might make sense by comparison to another. I see a lot of questions in the chat that are additional ones. So I'm going to continue because we're continuing with the presentations. You're going to have a chance to ask questions in the breakout rooms of the speakers. And so we will go on to the next speaker right now, who is Brian Breslin, and he is from the California Teachers Association. I had him based in his Southern California office, although I know he works across the entire state. And he's going to be asking you now to think about what you just heard and what you're about to do in the context of yourself as a worker. So Brian, on to you. Can someone unmute Brian, please? He can't unmute himself because he doesn't have that.
Okay, thank you, Shane.
Thank you.
My name is Brian Breslin. I am a bargaining specialist for the California Teachers Association. You can see all my wonderful biographical data. The only thing I'd like to emphasize is I am part of a large team that is working on all of the different facets of reopening schools for the new school year in 2021. Next slide, please. So today I want to talk to you a little bit about your professional safety and security, your personal safety and security, and how the impact of collective bargaining will influence all those. Next slide, please. So professionally, we have lots of concerns for our educators as we talk about placing them back in the classroom with their students. And so a few of the things I'd like to emphasize is we want to have a maintenance of our employment and all forms of compensation, making sure that all of our educators are staying employed and receiving their full compensation, including any health and other ancillary benefits, so that it does two things. One, it gives our educators the security to keep doing their job, and also it impacts the economy overall and doesn't contribute to unemployment. As we go back into classrooms and we look at those things, we need to make sure that we have protection from contracting COVID-19, and whether that's physical distancing, appropriate PPE, what are the cleaning and sanitizing standards, health screenings, and protection for persons from health risks, because we're going to have educators who have underlying health risks, and how are we going to allow them to continue to work and still remain protected in the environment which they're being asked to work in. We're also looking at increasing staffing. And then we also have to be prepared for distance learning, whether that's done completely or in a hybrid mode where students are coming to school a couple of days a week and then doing distance learning. And we have more time to prepare for this than when everybody was being removed from schools in the middle of March. We need to make sure that we have appropriate technology for all, practical professional development for educators, adequate time to transition to distant learning, and also the time to return. Next slide, please. We're also concerned about our personal safety and security. We need to practice self-care. And one of the ways we can do that is we need to adjust our expectations. When we're doing things now in the new environment, everything takes twice as long and twice the effort. Whether you're doing distance learning for home or whether you're just out in public, I know that as I go places in public, everything moves at a slower pace right now, and we have concerns to protect ourselves as well as those around us. And also, we need to make sure that we spend time with our family. And we also have some time to spend alone. Sometimes the best way to recharge our batteries is a little alone time. And with everybody sheltering at home, a lot of times that's not been possible. For in-person learning, make sure you feel safe in your own environment. Adjust your expectations for both you and your students. and try to keep school at school. And I was an educator for 22 years. I know we are not very good at that, but we need to make sure that we're able to compartmentalize some of the things in our lives so we're not carrying school 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Next slide, please. Distance learning in your household. In my house, I've been working from home since the middle of March. My partner is a 5th grade teacher who's been distance teaching for the last 2.5 months. And we have 2 high school students and a college student. And we're very privileged. Everybody has their own space. Everybody has their own technology. In many of our homes, we don't have that. And so I think it's important that when you're doing that, that everybody get a shot at the space and the technology. And, you know, we can't be all consumed with, we're not going to teach 24/7. So we need to make sure if we've got children at home who are also students, that we're creating time in our day to, 1, give them the opportunity to do their distance learning, and 2, provide whatever assistance we can. And I know as someone who works with teachers all the time, some of the things I've heard is they're being asked to work on concept with their own children that they're not prepared for. And so one of the things we've seen is we've looked at educators have started to create their own co-ops, their own distance learning teams, where they've got colleagues who may specialize in an area where their children are studying, and therefore they provide help, and then they're able to provide help to other children of their colleagues who are where it's more appropriate with what they're teaching on a daily basis. And the last thing I'll say about this is be prepared to be frustrated. We were never trained for this. So like I said, I'm a bargaining specialist. And so a couple of things I'd like to leave you with is, 1, almost all of this is bargainable. Anything that impacts our working conditions, our safety, is bargainable, regardless of what districts say. We're getting guidance from the CDE. It came out yesterday. The State Department of Health came out with theirs last week specifically for schools, and all of it is guidance, so that you need to be involved with your local union to help bargain things that will keep our members safe, keep them secure, and still allow them to educate our students. And one of the things that we've really focused on lately is also equity for all our students, doing our best to make sure that they have access to the education that they all deserve. As you go through this, make sure that, 1, you do have time to reach out to your families, especially with the new school year. We distance taught with students who we'd spent several months in the classroom with. If you're going to distance learn at the beginning of the year, this is a whole new set of parents and students. So make sure you take time to work with them, just to introduce yourself so they're comfortable with you. Be prepared to do some hybrid teaching. A lot of things I've seen is their students in school a couple days a week. Also, don't let them overwhelm you for that. You know, if there's an expectation you're going to be in a classroom 4 days a week, there's no way you can do 3 or 4 days a week of distance learning as well. And try and pare down your standards to cover, because it's, like I said before, everything takes twice the time and twice the effort. And next slide, please. I think we're done.
I had to unmute myself. Thank you, Brian. I really appreciate it. The video that you just saw on there was moving us to our next location. I noticed that someone said the chat box goes over the closed captions when people chat. You can move your chat box around. You can drag it around on your desktop. Maybe somebody could type that into the chat for me also, so that the person who asked that can read that in there. Okay, so now we have, how do certain of these interventions work? We have heard from Brian talking to us about sort of things for you to think about as a worker, and thinking about things as bargainable. Now our next speaker is actually a teacher. So we just moved from Southern California, where Brian is based, to Canada, Quebec, near Montreal. And our next speaker is Anna Maria Bondi. So Anna Maria, if you are ready to go, hopefully you've been unmuted and spotlighted.
I'm there.
Great.
Okay. Next slide. Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Anna Maria Bondi, and I'm a early childhood educator and elementary school teacher for over 25 years, the last 15 years of which I worked as a generalist teacher at the Sir Wilfrid Laurier School Board. Next slide, please. Our school board is located in the province of Quebec, and we are the third largest English language school board in the province. We have an immense, huge territory. We cover over 35,000 square kilometers. Our student population is over 14,000 students, attending classes in 26 elementary schools, 9 high schools, and we also have a whole section of 4 adult education and vocational training centers. The purpose of this too is that since our school board is so vast, we have schools located in metropolitan areas and in outer suburb, more rural areas as well. So our needs as a school board are very diverse and particular in comparison with other school boards in the province. My position at the school that I'm at right now is that I'm a second grade teacher. So I teach in the early grades in cycle 1. I'm also staff assistant and member of our teacher council and governing board. And I'm privileged enough as well to be our school delegate for our Laurier Teachers Union. Next slide. So what's going on right now in terms of pedagogical content and teaching on the floor? At our school board, we have 2 very distinct cohorts. We have the greater metropolitan Montreal area, which all schools are closed because we're designated as a hot zone. And those teachers are doing online remote learning platforms to teach and connect with our classroom families. And we are legally obliged to do this 3 times per week. Our Ministry of Education has deemed that these online learning platforms are non-obligatory for students, and hence there's no formal assessment and evaluation during this time. Also, for those schools who are opened in the more rural areas, the Ministry of Education has also deemed that school physical presence is also non-obligatory. This poses lots of challenges and questions because on a variable day, we'll get as many as maybe 5 to 10 students on an online learning platform, and other days we'll have as many as 20 students show up. So it's very variable. It's extremely difficult in order to do pedagogical planning. And in addition to this, the ministry is making sure that we need to continue our progressions of learning in our Quebec education plan and competency development in our students. Some Sir Wilfrid Laurier teachers that are outside of the greater metropolitan area have physically returned to work, and they're using the social distance model, something I'll speak about a little bit more later. But as well, they're teaching on site as well as supporting online platforms. There are some situations where teachers are working on a rotational basis and therefore are engaged in both cohort models. They're teaching physically in the classroom to get through the pedagogical content, as well as online teaching platforms. Next slide, please. Just to give you a little bit of information regarding where we're at in our statistics for Quebec. As of yesterday, in Quebec, we have over 53,000 confirmed cases of COVID, and that's up from about 198. And in Canada, we're at 96,475. So as you can see in terms of statistical analysis, Quebec does hold the lion's share of COVID-19 cases. And this is due to a couple of factors. One of the factors is Quebec travel habits. Our culture is more of a traveling culture, so we do travel quite a bit. And it's also in direct relation to when our spring break was on our academic calendar. Many families left the country for spring break travels, and then when they came back, COVID-19 was very much a tour de force. Next slide, please. So how are we doing with our physical health, our emotional health, and our mental health well-being? Our school board has been very generous and with our teachers union as well. They've been working hand in hand. So all the personal protective equipment that we've received at all our open schools, they've all come from the school board. All our colleagues that I've spoken to, we all have more than enough personal protective equipment. And health and safety and hygiene is a focal point every single day. Every day for the first 45 minutes to an hour. There's cleaning, disinfecting, students are washing their hands. There's preparatory work. There's cleaning of your workspace and your area. So there's a lot of time factors to take into consideration. Even before actual teaching pedagogical content, all of this needs to be done as well. All our schools that are opened have been physically set up in a social distance model framework. So classrooms, hallways, outdoor space have all been tape marked, and the location space distance stickers have been applied on all these physical spaces. The school personnel as well has access to online mental health professionals through our employee assistance program. Administrators and teacher colleagues as well are routinely checking in to help ease some of that anxiety and flat out fear that many of us have and we're experiencing during these exceptional times. As I mentioned earlier, teachers are working on a rotational schedule throughout the week, and not all personnel are needed every single day in school. And this is where that flexibility comes in. So when you're not teaching in school, you're working on an online platform. And this is an area of doing double duty that our teacher union is very, very concerned about, and it's in direct relation to teacher burnout and our workload compensation. So they're in direct talks as we speak with our school board, and we're addressing these issues right now, and they should be hopefully ironed out in the next little bit, because it's something that we would want to completely avoid in September for the reopening of schools. Even in place with all of these, there are still some teachers and students who have not physically come in because of due to their fears over COVID-19. Thank you. You can go to the next slide. Here are some photos of physical distancing in place in our kindergarten classrooms. So as of May 11th, we had 8 schools open in the outer Greater Montreal metropolitan areas. So as you can see, all the physical stickers are delineated in the hallways. In the movement and nap area, children have a hoop where they can put in all their space and have their area. And in the classroom, they have their own little learning pod area. So it's a self-contained learning area. The teacher walks around the classroom with a meter stick, and she has a centralized location so she can see everyone. Next slide, please. In our older schools, with children who are in grade 5 and 6, they're around 11 and 12 years old. The classrooms have been pretty much emptied out. And we also have physical distancing for all our outdoor activities as well. Before students come in, our school board has prepared students to prepare students with a video prior to reentry. So families are sent this video so they can see kind of a little bit of what their expectation is of what the reality will be like when you come in. It's one thing hearing it on the telephone, and it's another thing when you're actually living it. Thank you. Next slide.
And I just want to give you a time check, because
Okay.
maybe like 30 seconds.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I had 7 minutes. I had
okay.
1 more minute.
Go
Okay.
ahead.
Thank
No,
you very
maybe
much.
I'm wrong. Go ahead.
So here we have 2 models. These are some interview questions and what's been going on and how it's working out in both of these different cycles. The main factor is in both of these units, in the younger grades, social language and lexicon has changed. Their play talk has changed. Everything is about do not get close, hey neighbor over the fence. There's increased parallel play and a lot less interpersonal affected relationships. In addition, teachers need a lot more time for transition, for lunchtime routine, recess routines, anything that needs a little bit more health and hygiene. Every time we do from one activity to the next, there's a full stop, there's a whole hand washing and hygiene routine going on, and we move forward. In addition, teachers are teaching with visors and masks. So there's a little bit of a disconnect because the students are not getting the full visual representation of what teachers are trying to convey through nonverbal communication. In the older grades, it's a little bit easier. They're better able to express their stress and anxiety, and the cohort is working on and off. However, there's only 9 students present instead of a regular 30 in a classroom. Both teachers have said that the social distancing model is exhausting just because of the energy and the amount of time it takes to do everything. We need to be very flexible and very forgiving in ourselves. Next slide, please. Last slide. So basically, our conclusion is even though with in practice, the social distancing cohort model, we are still experiencing high levels of anxiety due to uncertainty in schedule, uncertainty of framework, uncertainty in student presence, uncertainty of our professional obligations to meet all the material that we need. And in addition to that, there's also, we need to have clearer defined rules from our Ministry of Education and school boards. Right now, not everyone is on the same page, even though we're trying to move forward together collaboratively. This needs to be a little bit more well-defined. A challenge that we will have as well is some of the sanitation with our caretakers and the bathrooming techniques in elementary schools. We're all on a rotational schedule. The bathrooms are being cleaned every week. So now comes the PPE and the space and the physical distance space, and also the cost of all this. So our school board is very much aware, and they're kind of monitoring all the PPE equipment and supplies that are being used so that they can better plan for fiscal responsibility in the new year. But it is a whole new wide world, and we're living it, and it's very stressful, but very rewarding at the same time with smaller groups. We don't see this as a physical construct that can be feasible in the new year. We have to think of some kind of duality and an interpersonal mix. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm sorry to rush you. There's so much important to say there. So just as a reminder, Anna Maria is going to be one of the people who's able to come visit you in your breakout session. I also want to let you know that as we run a little bit late here, I will prioritize your time to discuss with each other and deprioritize the share back. We'll take away from our time, not from yours. Okay. So our next speaker, we're going from Canada, Montreal, across the ocean to Taiwan. And so this speaker, Yiming Cho, or Chu, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, is an elementary school teacher in Taiwan. And he's going to talk to you about his experiences. They have also been in school there. And there you go.
Hi there. Before my presentation, I would like to express my highest respect to you for your collective effort in providing kids a bright future during this difficult time. Next slide, please. Just a couple of weeks ago, my student Yunting went to Taipei and interviewed the commander of Taiwan Central Epidemic Command Center, CECC. Quote, how to do PE or visual art class if schools closed due to COVID-19, unquote. She said with a friendly voice. Next slide, please. Like Yunting, many Taiwanese severely concerned the impact of pandemic. Currently, Taiwan is flattening the curve. 443 active cases, 7 deaths, no new domestic acquired case for more than 8 consecutive weeks. Everything seems to go as usual. However, 5 months ago, Taiwan's first case, a lady from Wuhan, China, was confirmed on January 21st, 2020. Like many of other countries around the world, Taiwanese were scrambled for toilet papers and anti-epidemic stops. However, Taiwan administration made all the effort to curb the spread of the virus, including border control, flights cutting off, mask rationing, building national teams to produce more medical materials, extending winter break for 2 weeks. Crucially, the production of surgical masks ramped from 3 million per day to 20 million per day, which sufficiently meets the need of 23 million of Taiwan's population. Next slide, please. You might ask, am I or my students safe at school? This question also went to the teachers of Taiwan before we open. This worry is not groundless if we consider the geographic proximity and the intensive interaction between Taiwan and China. How to keep more than 3 million senior high and below students safe in schools is a huge question. Next slide, please. We do our best to mitigate the risk of virus spread within campus. A plan to organize members to distribute materials to lay out precautionary measures is critical to curb the spread of coronavirus. In Taiwan, local education authority issue call of practice to schools. Then each school propose its own contingency plan. This plan mainly illustrates working items, responsible members, and a different SOP for various purposes. Students and their faculties are recommended to stay at home if they have symptoms. Schools provide official leave to faculties who are mandatory quarantine due to COVID-19. Likewise, students' absence related to infection will not be marked in attendance record. In order to contain transmission in campus, Taiwan Ministry of Education announced new standards for suspension of classes. For example, if one teacher or student gets COVID, their classes will be suspended for 14 days. If 2 or more teachers and students are confirmed, all classes in the entire school will be suspended. If 1/3 of schools in the school district are shut down due to infections, all schools will be closed. Next slide, please. Before reopen, Taiwan schools checked and purchased anti-epidemic supplies. Rubbing alcohol, bleach water, hand washer, and soaps were distributed to each class. Students are required to wash hands with soap frequently. Teachers sanitize classroom with diluted bleach water at school. Next slide, please. Students are required to check temperature before leaving the house and record the result on parent school contact book. One should stay at home if he has symptoms. To prepare for potential school suspension, Taiwan governments provide free 4G and a laptop lending solution for low-income families. Schools send several waves of questionnaires to trace students' contact history. This data should be wiped out in 28 days, according to Personal Information Protection Policy. Next slide, please. Taiwan schools adopted more strict precautionary measures during the peak of pandemic. Mask wearing is mandatory for everyone. No talking, no food sharing when lunch. No visitor is allowed to enter teaching area. Send the student home if they have symptoms in school. Mask wearing is mandatory if social distancing is not attainable. School activity with mass gathering are canceled or delayed. Next slide, please. Comparing with more than 3 million senior high and below students, there are only 25 active cases till now. Next slide, please. During this century crisis, both virus and disinformation might devastate our society. It's crucial to provide students and parents correct and instant information. For instance, different flow charts are used to get people know the SOP of potential situation. Important information is distributed through school websites and other official media. Taiwan CECC issues vaccine policy and guidelines according to the pandemic trajectory. Schools need to update information at any time and adjust their anti-pandemic measures. Next slide, please. Virus doesn't discriminate against anyone, but people might. What if discrimination happens in campus? The following story might give you some inspiration. When face mask was still being rationed in Taiwan, parents were worried their kids might be infected by Wuhan coronavirus by not wearing the girly or say pink mask given to them. In response to this concern, every mayor official at the press conference put on a pink mask. Commander Chen warmly stated, quote, "Everyone can wear any color of mask. Pink is actually a good color," unquote. He added that his favorite cartoon as a child had even been the Pink Panther. The value of equality, inclusion, equity, and diversity should be maintained anytime and anywhere. Next slide, please. 17 years ago, Taiwan was severely hit by SARS due to the lack of preparedness. hospital lockdowns, 73 deaths, including 7 medical workers, a lot of money lost. Panic led to social chaos and many more. After the tragedy, Taiwan perfected the laws and strengthened public health and commander systems. Disease statistics and information are instantly and completely given to average people to avoid distrust and mutual suspiciousness. Contingency hospitals and planes are assigned. Healthy, hygiene, and medical institutes routinely rehearse relevant anti-plague measures, such as traffic flow arrangement. The horrible experience of SARS made Taiwan more confident and capable of dealing with highly contagious disease like COVID-19. Hope my presentation is benefit to your preparation for the upcoming school reopen. Hope the United States and the rest of the world will return to normalcy as soon as possible. Staying with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Yiming. Thank you so much for doing that. I reached out to him through the Institute for East Asian Studies on campus, by the way. I should have mentioned how I found each person. Maybe I'll do that as we get closer to the end. So we're a little bit behind, but not a lot behind. One of the people in the room suggested that I do a poll. I think what I'd like to do is when we're in the discussions, I will send a message out. We'll see how things are going as we look through the rooms. And if we need to add a little bit more time to the discussion, we will do that. The share out of all the information from the groups will still be in slides. And so if you decide that you need to leave right at 5, you'll still have access to it. But we might go a couple minutes over. Okay, so we are leaving Taiwan and we are going around the world again to the North Atlantic, to Iceland, to a small town on the north coast of Iceland. For those of you who are not familiar with Iceland's geography, Reykjavik is on the south, farther in the south. And so our next speaker is Hildur. She is a secondary school teacher. She teaches age 16 to 19, I believe, so what we would consider to be high school, although that's not what it's called there. And she's going to talk about the reopening experiences in Iceland. So Hildur, if you're ready.
Ready.
And you can be pinned. Here you go.
Thank you. Hello from Iceland, or good evening. My name is Hildur and I'm a secondary teacher and teacher trainer at Akureyri Junior College, which is located on the north side of Iceland. And it's called actually the capital of the north because it has a staggering number of 18,000 inhabitants. So here you see a quick summary and of what measures were taken in Iceland. So being a very small population situated on an island, containing the virus was relatively easy. This we have begun to realize and appreciate now that the dust has settled and we see how other countries are getting on or coping. So it might seem odd that I mentioned this daily press conference, but it was really important because polls have revealed that the majority of adults in the country tuned in on these press conferences for information and discussion. In fact, according to New York Times, and now I'm, for example, referring to the preparatory material that Shane provided us with, at some point 3/4 of the Icelandic population were glued to the screen. So Iceland went into an emergency phase in the beginning of March, and the strategy that public officials pursued was really one that focused on test and trace. And this resulted in less than 1,900 infections and 10 deaths. So in May and June, we've had 5 new infections or 5 new cases, and 99% of those infected have recovered. Again, we're on an island. Now, a tracing app, not without its critics, I might add, was launched to help analyze individuals' travels and trace their movements against those of other people in case infection was reported or suspected infection arose. It might be worth noting that Iceland never imposed a lockdown, but rather a ban on public gatherings of more than 20 people. So what this meant for us teachers, it differed very much according to which school levels we were at. To clarify a little bit, 98% of Icelandic children between ages 2 and 6 go to pre-primary school. Then you have what we refer to as compulsory schools, which covers ages 6 to 16, and finally secondary schools from 16 to 19. So next slide, please. You should see a table there, and I'm going to refer to this as blended model, which it's possible that I stole that phrase from Shane. And I should mention that in our compulsory schools, it was more or less left to the school administrators how they hammered out the plan for their school. The only instructions issued by health authorities were to keep to normality as much as possible for ages 6 to 12. And you can see examples of how this worked out, especially during the emergency phase for ages, for instance, 5 and then 12 and then finally 17. Now for pre-primary school students, this meant more rigorous hand washing and general hygienic practices and less interaction between age groups. Now, social distancing is really impossible for that age group. However, parents were asked to keep their children at home if possible because children of healthcare workers took absolute priority. For students 6 to 12, this meant some changes. So during their shorter than usual school day, they stayed more, they needed to adhere to social distancing, I might add, but they stayed more or less in their home room. And they entered and left the school through the building through a designated door, and there was no interaction with other classes really. They only met their homeroom teacher, plus maybe 1 or 2 other members of staff. And as you can see on my slide, only academic subjects were taught. So no arts, no PE, etc. A quick side note, teenagers, 13 to 15-year-olds, they stayed at home. And my 13-year-old met his teacher and his class online for a morning meeting of about maybe 20 minutes, where the day's tasks were explained and then the students worked independently for the remainder of the day. There was some group work online, but students were discouraged from meeting because of social distancing. So for secondary school students, as well as university students, this meant online learning only, the emergency phase. And speaking from a viewpoint of a secondary school teacher, it just meant long hours and back pain, but I guess you get the picture. And we tried to stick to our timetable as much as possible using Zoom and OneNote and whatnot. Twice the time, twice the effort, I noticed Mr. Breslin say earlier in our talk. So May 4th, it meant back to normal for school children in general in Iceland, but for secondary school students, it may not have changed their schedule too much because we continued with our online learning throughout the school year or till the end of the school year. But opening the buildings, I want to point out to you, meant that those students who needed better access to the internet or better access to their teachers, it meant that our students could come in and spend their school day there. They could also schedule an appointment with a guidance counselor or a school psychologist in person. And for some students, this made all the difference. I feel I should add that masks are rarely seen in Iceland, and I cannot provide concrete research-based explanation for this other than that our chief epidemiologist, I massacred that pronunciation, has stated that masks can give us full sense of security, his words, not mine, and people here seem to adhere. So next slide, please. 7 minutes, 15 seconds, here we go. So as you probably know, for some students, this was a much better way of learning, according to them. But all of the students I've talked to, they missed school, not necessarily the teachers or the learning, just being among friends, the social aspect. Also, I want to point out a discussion that is going on at the moment in Iceland. In secondary schools, students have unlimited access to internet and can download programs for free, etc. They have the library, they have the classrooms after school too, where they can study. They have access to staff, etc. This not being an option really was an eye-opener for many to the different backgrounds of our students. And we pride ourselves in being part of this Nordic welfare system, a welfare state and all, but there are definitely lapses that need our attention. Whether the fall of 2020 will be a turning point in education in Iceland remains to be seen. This semester has really been a long experiment in using digital tools and communicating via technology. And I think just looking back, the turning point might have been in March. And it now just feels like we have participated in a long drill, preparing us for a future that is even more uncertain than experts in education have been pointing out for several years now. And that's it.
Thank you so much. I thought you did a lovely job. Hilda was saying she was a little bit nervous before. I mean, everyone was nervous. She just happened to tell me, and I was extremely nervous. But so far, I hope you're finding this as interesting as I am. And I hope that you're getting the sense that I saw someone put in the chat that like, this is a global situation right now. And there definitely is a value in hearing from people in other places who are ahead of us in this process. I mean, chronologically in terms of moving back to school, but interestingly, turns out, of course, we can also look right at home to see that. And so our last speaker, we're going from Iceland back across the ocean, and we are ending up right across the bay from where I am right now in San Francisco. And our final speaker today is, for the panel, is Jessica. We're running a little bit late, so like 10 minutes, but I think we can work on that. Jessica is an early childhood educator. I actually asked her yesterday to be on the panel today when we were having a conversation. And she's going to talk to you about having school going throughout the entire shelter in place program in San Francisco.
Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Jessica Campos. I am the center manager at a Head Start Early Head Start program located here in Bayview in San Francisco. So a week after the mayor put a shelter in place order, we actually opened as emergency care, serving children of essential workers. And due to the very first week, it felt like every hour something had changed. We had regulations and policies and licensing and everything that we follow change because everything was new and we just didn't know what was gonna be the best practice. So in the beginning, a lot of the very first thing was the social distancing piece and making sure that we were covering, we were using protective gear. If you go to the next slide, I think I talked a little, okay, yeah. So some of the preventative things that we have now put into place after the whole time is that parents, unfortunately, are not allowed, just to reduce the traction in the classroom. We receive the children at the door, and at the door we do a physical health check of the children to ensure that their well-being, and we do temperature check for three times a day. So when they come in, we do the health check, we do the temperature check, and then again before once they lay down a nap, and then before they go. And this is just to adhere to make sure they're doing well, and also adhere to the Department of Health, because again they were another person that we were having to adhere to. One of the supports also I didn't add, but the support that we had is we had daily calls with First Five on a daily basis. We had a Department of Health nurse contact us on a weekly basis as well, and she was easy to access. Anything that came up, we would just connect with her. We also had again to adhere with the 6 feet, our licensing person would come and we would do a virtual support so that they adhere that we were following all the regulations that they had in place. And again, with anything that children had, they would take off their shoes at the door and everything that they had, we put in a plastic bag. Each of the children have their cubby, so we would do every other cubby, again, to just limit the exposure of any of the children's belongings to other children's belongings. As one of our co-hosts also said, the hand washing increase. Teachers and children are hand washing. Teachers have, we provided them with different PPEs. We have masks, we had the face shields, we have gloves, and everything. Once they started, they all had that, wore it. And as we progressed, because we are working with children 0. If you go, the next one I think is, I don't know. We have one, but we provide service to children from 2 to 5. So as early childhood educators, we know this is the key time in which children are developing relationships and developing their foundation of how they are building their social skills. So we had to really think outside of the box of how we're still supporting the children in that aspect, and knowing that we had to maintain the 6 feet distancing. So what we had to do a lot, is the setup. A lot of the work became individualized, so it was our job as teachers to set the space and the structure for children to do parallel play, to still have all of the opportunities for engagement in the classroom, but more so on a individual basis. But to the twofold, if children did interact with each other, we wouldn't tell them they had to separate. What we would do is that they would wash their hands and talk about hand washing and ensure that it was minimal interaction, but it was just, we had to take that precaution because, again, at this age, this is when they're developing and they're growing those skills onto the future. And us as teachers, we're modeling for them. So we would have to talk about what were the intentionalities of how we were going to produce that social distancing piece for them. And again, it was just more so what were we doing and what were the innovations? Sensory boxes for Play-Doh, for sand, for art. And I think in every area, as well in the art, separating, having they had their pencils, they had their markers, everything in a unified space for them to still have autonomy and build those skills of being able to make choices, but choices within the limitations that they had in the setup of the classroom.
Do you want me to go forward or backward
Yes,
from here?
or you can go forward in the interaction. So again,
Okay.
when we're speaking about the intentionality of the interactions, there is a true fear of teachers coming back and interacting with children because you just never know, especially when there is media saying that children can be carriers and you were unsure. One thing that we also ended up speaking about is bringing extra clothes and having smocks, because a lot of the kids were going through a lot of stress, and we could see their feeling. A lot of them were seeking more of the interactions and seeking for hugs. So we felt bad not giving children hugs. So what we decided was either teachers were gonna bring their extra clothes, have smocks, or know that when they were gonna leave from here, they would go straight into the showers so that we could provide that support for the children. Again, we're working with 2 to 5-year-old children. And it was just a conscious decision that as early educators, that we were going to be able to be there as a social emotional support for the children. Yes, lacking the social distance as much as possible, but also not denying a child when they're asking you for a hug and asking you for support. It was just, again, intentionality of being extra close. And it is all the teacher's decision. None of the teachers are forced to do anything, but most of the teachers, and this was volunteer basis. So as emergency care, we put out an email saying teachers who are willing to, as volunteers, participate in the emergency care. At first, we only had 2 teachers wanting to participate. But by the 3rd week, we had about 7 teachers on a constant rotation at our center. With the transition.
Sorry. I mean,
Okay.
there we go.
And then transitions were longer, as everybody said, but we also minimize, as you can tell, we provide care on a regular basis for 20 children in a preschool classroom, but with the regulations and the new modifications, we reduced it to 10, so we can only provide support for half of the number of children for the social distancing. So some of the recommendations that I've placed is that children at centers, just being mindful, you know, as teachers and colleagues, we understand what we are being as teachers, what is the importance of modeling for the children and modeling the moving forward, how they are individuals in society. Reminding yourself, knowing again with cleaning, sanitizing has doubled it, double the time that we are in the classroom where we feel like we're cleaning and we're spraying on a like every minute, but we also have to remember that we are to be present for the children and just setting up the classroom so that sanitation and cleaning is minimized. So we also have made containers where it's items have been minimized. So like children have animals and toys in there that if they play with them, they close it up and then we take it out to the kitchen so that at the end of the day, we are cleaning it through the dishwasher. And again, some of the other ones is just how resilient children are, and that as long as we're talking to them and explaining the hand washing procedure and being safe, they're very resilient and they'll adjust to the new norm. And just being flexible for yourself and being flexible to the children and to parents, because this is, as everybody's saying, this is the new norm and this is everything is new. So it's a process of having to rethink of our old habits and having to adjust to the new adjustments and the new protocols and procedures that have been placed upon us through either the education system, through state, through the health department, and all of those people that we have to kind of recall to.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate it, and especially last minute with very little time to prepare. So those were our panelists. I hope that gave you some food for thought and you are ready for the next step. I also agree that that last slide is amazing. Thank you, Elizabeth. Okay, so let me explain what's going to happen in the discussion groups, and I hope this isn't too complicated, and I will try to be quick. So in your discussion groups, as you are thinking about how to address immediate needs, we want you also to try to seek opportunities for creative restructuring of your classroom, and then think more broadly about your practice, and then think even more broadly than that about your institution. I saw someone in the chat asked, like, well, what about transmission of the virus outdoors? What does this mean for moving outside? That's exactly the type of thinking that I think might be interesting for you to imagine. This is an opportunity, sort of, an opportunity for you to imagine things that under other circumstances might not have been feasible or acceptable to contemplate, but that might be really great ideas. In the email that I sent to you with your preparatory documents, you were asked to choose 2 students who have characteristics that make it so that there are structural impediments to them being able to fully participate in school. And I asked you to keep those 2 students in mind during your discussion and try to imagine how you would be a good teacher to them rather than to every single student in your classroom. And collectively, I think that'll get us to a place where we want to be. I also want to invite you to draw on ideas from other places. You heard some people now from other places in the world and from other places, well, I mean, across the bay. That's not really that far in the US for us, but for some of you on the call it is. And I want to invite you to draw on ideas you heard about from other countries as well. So your task. You are going to discuss 2 protective measures. So a protective measure is like wearing masks or having health screening or having ventilation. You're going to have 5 to choose from. We're going to ask you to choose one of the first 4 is at your discretion, and then for everyone to discuss the 5th one. We're going to ask you to address 2 questions about each of them. The first one is, what could you do to work around this protective measure, modify it slightly, incorporate it into your teaching, be creative. It's okay to come up with a bold, slightly, out there idea that might not be adopted. We know you can find obstacles. All of us can conceive of the obstacles to this. It seems overwhelming, but the goal here is to think in a different direction about how you could work around it. Or, as I said, modify, incorporate it. And then the second one, which comes out of that, is what institutional changes or resources would you need to turn this protective measure into an opportunity? So would you have to have a change in your schedule? Would you have to have a change in how you use the building? Would you have to have a change in something else, some other type of resources? That doesn't mean you're going to get them necessarily. We know reality But I think it's an interesting way for you to understand collectively what you might want to push for as what you think is the most important. So when you're in there, please try to be visibly present. Keep your camera on as much as possible. If you can't, I understand for some reasons you may not, but if you're able to, that would be helpful for it to be a discussion. You are going to open 3 documents and my colleagues are going to put them in the chat. They've done it a couple of times, but they'll do it again. These are the directions document, your group document, and the questions document. The questions document has already been shared once. It is editable now. But if you just open the directions document, and if the other PDP people just put the directions document in there, you can get to your group document and the questions document through that. There are live links in that. As soon as you get into, thank you, Kristen. As soon as you get into your rooms, you need to select a reader, a facilitator, a recorder, and a question writer right away. They're not giant tasks, so ideally, pick someone quickly. If you don't pick someone, it should be the first 4 people alphabetically by first name. As soon as you selected your roles, the reader should begin reading the directions to the group. I've scripted it and we have all gone over it and I've run it by people, so hopefully it's not too confusing. And please share airtime. If you've commented multiple times, let someone else speak. When you are moved to the breakout room, note the name of your room. There will be a number associated with it. Jason, if you want to put anything into the chat here to explicate that, because I know we had some discussion room problems, please do. But you are going to need the directions document, which is in the chat box. Nancy just put it in there again. You're going to need the group document, which is accessible through that directions. You're going to need the question document. One important thing, only the question writer should have the question document open. We don't want to have 75 people trying to write on the question document at once. So please, 1 writer per group for that. Lastly, if you are asking questions, if you have questions that you want to ask, you've already been able to write them into the questions document, but you have 2 options. If you just need help, say ask for help and a co-host will come to your room as soon as possible. If you have a question for the panelist, your question writer can enter it in the document. The panelist will either type a response or come to your room. They're not supposed to spend more than 5 minutes in your room because for obvious reasons, that would make it so other people couldn't. And I am just going to say that since we're starting at 4:17, we will go until 5 p.m. We'll be pulling information on the documents. I'll bring you back to the room at 5 or just slightly after 5. And we'll give you the option to do a share out. You will find out your group number when the room's open. It's going to invite you to go to a certain room and it's going to tell you the room number there. So keep your eyes open for that. And that's how you're going to know your room number. And hopefully between the group of you, at least one of you will remember which one it is. Okay. So Jason, if you could send them and then briefly hand the host controls back to me so that I can stop the YouTube thing, that would be great. Or if you're able to stop it, you don't need to give them back to me. And that's it. Thank you. So you guys keep your eyes open for the document, copy and paste it, and then Jason, go ahead and send us away. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.